Hello everybody, welcome to our live crochet event. I'm Brenda KB Anderson and we are back with the gallery throw crochet along. So here's my gallery throw. If this is the first time that you're joining us for the crochet along, just know that this is the fourth lesson, okay? So you can certainly stay here and check it out. You don't have to do these squares in any particular order, but I will say I did go over a lot of the general information on the gallery throw back in lesson 1. So lesson 1 was when we had talked about the bobble cable square, which is this square right here. And I also did kind of like a little overview of what's going on with this whole blanket. So if you missed it, you can go ahead and go back and watch that. You can also ask questions here if there's something that you're missing and you need to know. Or, you know, if there's anything I'm demonstrating and it isn't clear, or you just want to say hello and tell me how it's going. And if you're working on your blanket, I'd love to hear that, what colors you're using, what kind of yarn, anything like that. I love it when you guys pipe up and say what's going on your end of things. I'd love to hear from you. So today we are going to be, actually, let me back up a second. So we've done 3 already. We've done the bobble cable square, which was the first lesson. The second lesson was the log cabin square, which is this square right here. And then the most recent lesson that we did was the grain square, which looks like this. So it's got that fun texture, and not that it really matters for this blanket, but it is a totally reversible stitch pattern, which is a fun one to learn. So whether you are actually working on this blanket with me, or you plan to do it later, or you never plan to make the blanket, maybe you just want to join us for learning some different interesting stitch patterns, and that's totally okay too. I am glad that you're here no matter what you're doing. And yay, I get to teach the popcorn granny square today. That's this one. It's kind of like a regular granny square, except it has a lot of extra nubbly texture. It's like a combination of popcorns and the granny square. So this is a fun one. All right. So you need to have, well, actually you don't have to have this many colors. If you're working with fewer colors, or even if you were doing this all in one color, it would still be really cool with all this texture. But I'm going to be using these 5 colors, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. I know these 2 colors are kind of similar. This is a more grayish version. This is a little bit brighter here. It's maybe a little bit hard to see on your monitor. But there are 5 colors in my granny square. And then there is going to be a contrasting color. So actually, secretly, there's 6 colors that's going to go around the outside. All right, and then I am using an H hook, which is a 5mm hook, but you can use whatever hook makes sense to you to get the gauge that you want to have, you know, the size of your squares and also the feel of your fabric. That's important too, so you can certainly be using a different hook, whatever you need to get that. I also wanted to mention, if you have questions about previous squares, you can go ahead and put those in the chat. I will probably be going through this square first and then go back to see if there's any extra questions about previous squares. I did see that there were a couple in the chat that happened since the last time we met, so I'm going to go back and address those at the end of this live. So, all right, so let's get started on this square. I am going to start with this color here. Oh, let me also mention too, throughout the process of making all of your squares, you will see in your downloads that there is usually some, like a way to tell you how to use your colors. So whether it's, you know, make 1 square in each of the, you know, contrasting colors you have, it might be instructions like that. Or with this square, because we're using all of the colors that we are using in the blanket, I broke it down for you to tell you how to create your square by saying use color A, color B, color C, color D, color E, and then color F, which is the white that I'm using, or whatever you're using for your, you know, kind of the binding color that you're using around the edging, I should say. And then, you know, number 2 square, the second square would start with the B, and then C, D, E, and then A. So we're rotating through these colors, so that way all the squares are different, and we're using the same amount of each color, and we can kind of keep track of that. So you would be starting out on this one. We start, let's see which color, I'm not even sure which color this one is, because that's in my other. But if, say, for example, you know, this was color A, B, C, D, E, and then we go back to A, and then we do F for the border here. So you're just going to be moving your way through following the directions here. All right, so, and starting at the middle, I should say. When I say go, you know, number 1, we start with the A. That means the A starts in the middle here. All right, so now that we talked about that, we are going to get started on just crocheting this thing up. I'm going to pull out my trusty chart here. If you've seen other lives with me before, you probably know by now that I really love working from charts. I love teaching from charts because I have a hard time reading a bunch of words and then understanding what I just read, especially when I'm teaching. If I'm trying to talk at the same time, it's really hard for me. But charts are kind of my go-to. It really helps me to understand how the stitches relate to one another. It's basically like a map of what you are about to make. So that I will be referring to the chart, but if you are thinking to yourself, oh, I don't like charts. I really don't like charts. I don't understand them. They don't make sense to me. That's okay. You don't need to be able to read the chart in order to complete this. All of your directions are just written out right here, so you don't need to worry about it. You could just follow the directions as they're written. So we are going to start out here with our first color at the center of our granny square. We are going to chain 3. And if you find it very difficult to work into this tiny little loop that we're making, you can chain more if you need to. And I will show you a kind of a little tip at the end. Actually, we'll leave a little bit of extra yarn tail so that I can show you this tip at the end to tighten up that center of your granny square. If you find working into those 3 chains is really tough, because it can be kind of tricky. So we're going to chain 3, 1, 2, 3, and then we're going to slip stitch into the first chain that we made. So right here, we'll just place our hook, yarn over, and pull through, and pull through. So we have this little tiny hole. That's where we're going to be working. And if you're like, yeah, Brenda, that's really small. I can't get my hook in there. It's just too awkward. It's okay. Try chaining 4 and seeing if that's enough. We can, even if you chain more than 4, we can still fix that situation at the end. We're going to use our trusty beginning yarn tail to tighten that loop up later. Okay, so now we're going to start with the beginning popcorn stitch. So which is labeled in my chart and in the pattern as BPC, so the beginning popcorn. And it looks just the same as a regular popcorn stitch in my chart, except you can see there's these little kind of ovals along the side. Those are standing for that beginning chain, because what you're doing is you're just chaining 3, 1, 2, 3, and that's going to count as the first double crochet in this popcorn. All right, so then we're going to be making 4 more double crochets into this ring. So we're going to yarn over, insert, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. That's a double crochet. So here we have our beginning chain, which is going to count as our first double crochet, and there's our next double crochet, and we are going to do 3 more. So 1, 2, now we just need to do 1 more double crochet. So yarn over, insert, yarn over, pull up, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. Okay, and then we're going to pull our hook out of our loop. So just elongate it a little bit so you know it's not going to, start undoing itself. Then you're going to place your hook into the top of this turning chain. So here is the last stitch of the turning chain, and you can place this underneath that V, how you normally do, like this. But this is a little fiddly to me. You can get it under there, that's perfectly fine. If you don't like doing that, another option would be for you to place your hook right in the middle of that. Here's that V from that top, this is the top chain here. You're going to place it so that this loop that's towards you is on the bottom, and then the loop from the back of the chain, which is back here, that horizontal loop, and this back loop are above your crochet hook. So when I push it through here, there's 1 loop below and 2 loops above. That works just as well, and I think it looks fine. That's how I normally like to work into that top of my chain. But you can do it however you like to do it. I just find it easier to insert my hook through there, and I think that it looks fine. So I'm going to place that loop back on my hook, and then I'm just going to pull that right through, and that kind of closes up the top. It kind of brings it into a circle, if you look at the end here, for your popcorn. Then we are going to chain 5. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And now we're going to create another popcorn. So this time we are just starting out with 5 double crochets in the ring. So we yarn over, insert, yarn over, pull up, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. There's the first one, second one, third one, fourth one, 15, fifth one. I don't know how I got to 15. That was a crazy moment there in my brain. All right, so we have 5 double crochets, not 15. And then we're going to pull we just kind of elongate that loop a little, insert our hook through the top of that first double crochet, put the loop back on our hook, and then we're going to pull that through, and that kind of curls the end of our popcorn stitch. All right, now we're going to do 5 more chains. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And then we're going to repeat the process. So we're going to do 5 more double crochets into that beginning ring. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Pull up on your loop, place it in the very top of that first double crochet, place the loop back on the hook, and pull that through to create the popcorn. Then we're going to chain 5 more. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. I'm kind of sliding, I'm just using my fingers to slide that out of the way so we have enough room left to create our last popcorn. So we're going to do 5 double crochets. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Elongate your loop, put your hook through that top of the first double crochet, place the loop back on the hook, and pull through. And then we're going to chain 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then we make a slip stitch into that very first chain after we made our popcorn. So that is right here. Just right after that popcorn comes together, you're going to do a slip stitch right there just to connect everything into a ring. So if you look at the top, you've got those 4 popcorns, and if you look at the bottom, you can see all your little chain spaces back here. Okay, you got your 5 chain spaces. And we'll just cut our yarn here, and then we'll just fasten off. So we'll just yarn over and pull through, just like that. All right, we did our first round. Now our second round I'm going to do in this grayish color. All right, so we're going to place a slip knot on our hook, and we're basically just making a slip stitch in any of these chain 5 spaces. Doesn't matter where, doesn't make a difference. I'm going to do it right here, and I'm just going to hold this and work over it in this direction, just to give it, I don't know, it's like you're kind of weaving it in a little bit. Actually, you can make it go this way, even though it doesn't really want to at first. And then you can join over here. Maybe I'll do that because that would hide more of it for longer, because we could take it and travel it around. You'll understand what I mean in just a second. Okay, so we have a slip knot of the next color on our hook, and then we're going to insert into that chain 5 space. And see, I'm just holding that ending yarn tail on top because we're going to work around it. That'll just give us a little head start with the weaving in ends later. So we're going to yarn over, pull up our loop, and pull it through the loop that's on the hook to anchor our yarn to that loop. And this needs to come from about the center of that loop, because we're going to create a popcorn here, and then we're going to work our way around and then finish up with the popcorn in the same place as we started. All right, so let me just show you where we're at here. So here we started with round 1. We made those 4 popcorns with those chains in between. This is the little black round in the center. And we fastened off, and we are going to join our yarn right here and create this beginning popcorn. Then we're going to chain 2, and then we're going to start working a repeat all the way around. Okay, so here we are making our beginning popcorn. So that would mean we chain 3, 1, 2, 3, and then we're going to work 4 more double crochets into that same chain space. So there's 1, 2, 3, 3 and 4. Elongate your loop, place your hook back in the top of that chain 3, put the loop back on the hook and pull it through to make a popcorn. Then we are going to chain 2, 1 and 2, and now we're going to work into the next chain 5 loop. Okay, so we're going to do a popcorn, chain 5, popcorn in this chain 5 loop. So here's our first popcorn. There's our popcorn, and we're pulling it through to tighten the top of that, and then we're going to do a chain 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and then another popcorn right here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then we will pull that through to close off our popcorn. So we have our first popcorn, chain 2, popcorn, chain 5, popcorn into that chain 5 loop. Then to get over to the next chain 5 loop, we're going to chain 2, 1 and 2 to kind of travel over to the side a little. And then we're going to do a popcorn, chain 5, popcorn. Okay, so we're going to, every time we get to a chain 5 loop, we do popcorn, chain 5, popcorn, and then we chain 2 to get to the next chain 5 loop. So here's the popcorn, the first popcorn of that loop. There we go. And then chain 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then another popcorn here. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 double crochets. Then we're going to go back into the top of that first double crochet, place the loop on our hook and pull through. And then to get over to the next chain 5, we're going to chain 2, 1 and 2. And then we're going to do a popcorn, chain 5, popcorn. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And we'll pull that loop through. So when I do that, after I elongate our loop, before I pull it through here, I shorten that loop so that it doesn't slip off my hook, and it's a little bit easier to pull that all together. I shorten it before I pull it through. And then we're going to chain 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And then another popcorn. 1, 2, 3, 4, whoops, and 5. And then we're going to make that into a popcorn. And then we will chain 2, 1, 2, because we are at one of these corners here and we're trying to get over to the next chain 5, popcorn, chain 5, popcorn, in which we started with the last popcorn of that chain 5 loop, if that makes sense. So we started here to make our round, and we have to complete this little section. And this is a chain 5 space, so we're going to make another popcorn here. Four and 5 double crochets. Now we'll turn that into a popcorn, and then we will chain 5. 1, 2, 3, 4. Actually, we just chained 4. No, we chained 5. We chained 5 at the end here too. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then we are going to slip stitch into that first chain that we made after we made that popcorn. So that's right here. So basically, if you look at it, you're just if you look at the top of your popcorn, you're just slip stitching into this right here, right next to it. Just like that. Okay, and then we're gonna cut our yarn and fasten off. Just like that. Okay, so we have rounds 1 and 2 done. And now we're gonna move on to number 3, which we're gonna use this gold color. And this is similar to the previous round, but you'll see that the pattern will start to emerge after maybe the next round. It'll make more sense. But what we're gonna do is we start with a slip knot on our hook. This is how we're gonna start attaching every color as we work. And we are gonna slip stitch into any of those chain 5 spaces. So if you look at it, you just don't wanna slip stitch into this little chain 2 space, just find a longer one. So we're gonna slip stitch here. On our chart, this is where we're at. We're on round number 3. This is where we're gonna do our beginning popcorn into this chain 5. I know this looks like a chain 4, but here's the other little chain right next to that popcorn. And the reason I drew it like that was because it really looks like this chain belongs to this popcorn. So I hope that's not confusing. I was trying to make things a little bit easier, but you're making a beginning popcorn into this longer chain space here. You'll be able to tell the difference between your chain spaces, the longer chain spaces and the shorter. They're pretty obvious. Okay, so any chain 5 space is fine to join into. So we'll start here, and we are going to insert our hook, yarn over, pull up a loop, and pull through that loop on the hook to anchor our yarn. And we're going to begin with the beginning popcorn here. So we chain 1, 2, 3, and then we're going to work 4 more double crochets. 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then we take our hook out, place it in the top of that beginning chain. There we go. Place the loop back on it, pull it through, and then we're going to chain 2 stitches, just 2 here, because we're working our way over to a chain 2 space. Every time we're hopping from one chain space to another chain space, if you're moving to the next chain space, you just chain 2. All right, so now we have a little tiny chain space here. We're just going to put a popcorn in there and then do another chain 2. So just 1 popcorn this time. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And we'll insert our hook through the top of the first double crochet, place the loop back on our hook, pull it through to complete that popcorn. And then we're moving to the next chain space, so that means we chain 2, 1 and 2. Then we're going to do a popcorn, chain 5 popcorn. So whenever you get to a chain 5, except for where you joined, the very first one where you joined, this is a little different, but when you get to the next chain 5 spaces, if it's a chain 5 space, you do a popcorn, chain 5 popcorn into that chain 5 space. All right, so here is our first popcorn, and then we do a chain 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And then we move on to the next popcorn. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then we're going to chain 2 to get to the next chain space. And then we're going to put a popcorn in this chain space. So when we get to the chain 2 spaces, you just place a popcorn in there, and then you chain 2 and move on to the next chain space. Let's see, so we have a couple. So Marianne is wondering, if you don't change colors, do you continue as if you have? Okay, so on this square, it's going to be, let me just think about this for a minute. when you slip stitch just past that popcorn, you've already moved into the next space. So if you are doing this without switching colors, what I would recommend is, so let's just say, actually maybe I'll show you. Okay, I'll show you here on the chart. Okay, so after you've worked round 1, if you want to continue in the same color, what I would do is, instead of doing your beginning popcorn here and then moving over and then working your way around, I would just slip stitch into this chain 5 space, which will be right next to where you joined, because this would be your last popcorn, chain, slip stitch into that popcorn. So you could slip stitch into this chain 5 space and do your beginning popcorn here. Then work your way around. So you do beginning popcorn, chain 5, beginning popcorn, chain 2, beginning popcorn, chain 5, beginning popcorn, in the next space, chain 2, and then the same thing all the way around. You'll do beginning popcorn, chain 5, beginning popcorn, chain 2, and then you will slip stitch to this chain right here. Then to work on the next round, you would start here and work your way around. So instead of going back, because what I did was I went back, and that way it's just a little bit of a different construction. You don't have to do it that way, but you could just continue with a slip stitch and then a popcorn in the chain 5 space that you have slip stitched into. I hope that makes sense. If you could pop back in here if you have any other questions about that, Marianne, just let me know. So what I've been talking about, just to recap, that is if you are going to work this all in one color and you're not going to make these color changes. All right, so let's see. Here we are finishing up this popcorn in a chain 2 space. So that means if it's a chain 2 space, we just do 1 popcorn. I'll move that to the side so you can see a little better. So here is our popcorn in a chain 2 space, and then we're going to chain 2 to get to the next loop, and then we're going to do popcorn, chain 5, popcorn, because this is a longer space with the chain 5. So here's our first popcorn. And then we're going to chain 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and then a popcorn here. All right, so we've done popcorn, chain 5, and here's our second popcorn in that chain 5 loop, and we're going to chain 2 and move on to the next chain 2 space. So here's a popcorn in that chain 2 space. So chain 2, so there's just going to be 1 popcorn. So that's kind of a good rule of thumb for this square. If it's a chain 2 space, you do 1 popcorn. If it's a chain 5 space, you do 2 popcorns separated by that chain 5 loop. All right, so we're moving on to the next chain space, which is a chain 5. So we're going to do popcorn, chain 5, popcorn. One, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And now we're going to do another popcorn. 1, 2, whoops, 3, 4, and 5. And we'll complete our popcorn and do a chain 2 so we can work to the next chain 2 space. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And we'll chain 2. And now this is a chain 5 loop, but we've already started in here with one. We already have 1 popcorn placed. So we're going to do a popcorn, chain 5, and then join. So here's our popcorn, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, and Elaine is saying, hi, she's excited to start this one. Awesome, this is a fun one. And Carol is saying, I'm crocheting with you, but slower, yes. I'm trying to fit all this into my 1 hour slot. But mine is looking more like a circle and a square. Yes, it does look like a circle. Let me show you. Here, I'm gonna finish my popcorn and chain 5, and I wanna show you guys something so you know that it's working. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then we're gonna slip stitch join in that first chain after that first popcorn. If you look at the top, it's right here. Make our slip stitch, and then we will fasten off. Now you can already see what's happening here. It looks like I'm making a dome, and it's a circular shape really, but it looks like it wants to be a little dome. If you look at it from the side, it is sticking up. But I know this seems wrong, and I didn't trust this at first when I started working on it, and I thought, oh, this is gonna be a mess, this is not working. But if you squish it down, it becomes a flat square. So we're starting to get those square sides like this. So what it needs is a little bit, this one you really will have to block. And like sometimes with blankets, I tell people, you know, only block it if you really want to. But with this square, in order to make it lay flat like this, you're gonna have to block it. So if you're using a wool, you can use like a wet blocking method, just get it all wet, squeeze out the moisture, let it dry. Or I will show you this in a couple more rounds. I will show you my steam blocking method because I'm using acrylics. It responds really well to steam. So that was a really good question, Carol. I did plan to mention that, but I'm glad that you asked that question to kind of prompt me. So, because it does seem like you're making something, like you might be thinking, why am I making a granny square bowl? This isn't working, Brenda. But if you just sort of press it flat on the table and hold it there, you'll see it's starting to create these square sides, and you know, it's fine, but then as soon as you let it pop up again, it's going to be that bowl shape. So you do actually need to block this one. All right, so we're gonna do the next round in this sort of tan color. And here we go. Again, we're gonna start with a slip knot on our hook. And I'm just gonna work a partial round here, I think, because, well, maybe we'll see how far I get. I might be able to complete the whole round. Okay, so to join the tan, you're gonna join to any chain 5 space, just as we always do in this pattern. So these are the chain 2 spaces, they're smaller. You're gonna join to any one of these longer spaces by just reaching in there, doing a yarn over, pulling up a loop, and pulling it through your slip knot on your hook. Then we're gonna start with the beginning popcorn. So 1, 2, and 3. And then we're gonna do 4 double crochets to do our beginning popcorn. 1, 2, 3, 4. So Marianne is saying, thanks, I think I've got it. I was thinking more like a regular granny square. I like the idea of changing colors on each round, or even every 2 rounds, yes. And you can do it either way. And there's actually, I mean, there are so many different ways to make a granny square in general, just like a regular granny square. With the changing color thing, I've seen many, many different ways of changing color, different joins that you can make. Like sometimes when you get around to a corner on your granny square, if you want to end right in the middle, instead of doing that chain 2, you could do a half double crochet into the top of that first kind of group of 3 double crochets to make that chain 2 space, and then you end over here. So there's lots and lots of different ways to join and change colors, and I mean, man, there's just a lot of variations on granny squares. All right, so we've done the first beginning popcorn right here, and then we're going to move on and see how these are chain 2 spaces. So we're just going to create a popcorn in each chain 2 space, and then in between popcorns we're going to do chain 2. So we're going to do a chain 2 right now, chain 2, because we're moving on to the next chain 2 space, and then a popcorn here. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Then we're going to finish up our popcorn, and then we're going to chain 2, 1 and 2, and then we're going to do 5 double crochets in the next one to turn that into a popcorn. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And we'll turn that into a popcorn. And then chain 2, because we're moving on to the next chain space. And this time we have a longer space. We have a chain 5 space here. So guess what? In the chain 5 space is a popcorn, chain 5, popcorn. It will always be that. Well, until we get to one of the last rounds. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Here's our first popcorn. And then chain 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And we're going to do another popcorn right here. Oh, and Carol chimed back in and said, thank you, yes, mine is just like that. Yes, that it will look wrong when you're making this. It will look like a weird puffy bowl that you're making, but when you squish it down onto the table, you'll see that it will turn into a square. You just have to tame it into a square. All right, then we do 2 chains, go to the next chain 2 space. And we are creating a popcorn. Because it's a chain 2 space, we're just placing 1 popcorn here. And I'm sure you guys noticed this, but this project is a total yarn eater. Like the whole blanket really, because there's so much texture, but especially the square. It uses up a lot of yarn, but it's so fun. How can you resist? All right, so I've moved on. I'm placing a popcorn in the next chain 2 space already here. There's our popcorn. And we're going to chain 2. And now we've moved to the next chain space, which is a chain 5 right here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Here's our first popcorn in that chain 5 space. And chain 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and the next popcorn. There we go. There's our popcorn, and then we chain 2, and then we're going to make a popcorn, chain 2, popcorn, chain 2 into each of these 2 chain 2 spaces. So now you can see when here, I'm going to release it for a minute. See what we're making? It's a weird granny square bowl, but then you do this, and it's kind of round, and it doesn't make any sense. But then when you do this, it shows us that it has sides on it. And the bigger it gets, the more obvious this will become. You just kind of push it down and look at it on the table and be like, okay, yeah, that is turning into a square when I press it onto the table. So strange. But I just wanted to point this out. So as you're working your way around and making a bigger and bigger square, and you could just make a whole blanket out of this if you wanted to. You just could keep going. But for the purpose of the project, you just have to work as specified. Otherwise, it's not going to fit with the rest of your blanket square. But I just wanted to show you, as you're working around and around, those chain 2 spaces are going to end up here, like along the sides of your square. And then the chain 5 spaces, where you have a popcorn, chain 5 popcorn, those end up here on those corners. So that's what creates the corner, the turn between here as you work across. You're just doing, popcorn, chain 2, popcorn, chain 2 as you're working across. But then when you get to those corners, that's where you're adding the increases, is what you're really doing. So you're doing popcorn, chain 5, popcorn in each popcorn, chain 5, popcorn. You're just creating that little corner there. Okay? All right, I'm going to continue a little bit more. And then I think we'll switch to showing you how to do the double crochet round, and I'll explain that a little bit more. Okay, I've got this last popcorn here, and then a chain 2, and then because we're going to a chain 2 space, we're just doing 1 popcorn here. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And then we're going to chain 2. And then we get to the next chain 5 space. So we would do popcorn, chain 5, popcorn. So as you work your way around, as you get a few more rounds in, it will start to make more sense. If you're looking at this now and thinking, how am I going to remember all that? Once you start actually working on it, it'll make more sense to you when it's in your hands. If you get to a chain 2 space, you put a popcorn in it. Anytime you're going to the next chain 2 space, you make a chain 2, and when you get to these chain 5 spaces, you're going to do popcorn, chain 5, popcorn. Okay, so those are going to create those corners. So you would continue working this all the way around, slip stitch just as we have, like in the chain right after that popcorn at the end. Then you would do one more round. I would be using this sort of silvery greenish color to create this last round here. I've already done it right here. And then you're going to be making one more round before you do your edging. So the round that you make is just a double crochet round, and we're going to do that in the same color as the center. So if you start with an A, you would do the double crochet round with an A as well. All right, so we have a total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different colors here, and then we're starting again with the center color. And we are going to join to any of these corner chain 5 spaces, okay? Because the chain 5s are only on the corners. We've got chain 2s all, in between. So I'm adding a slip knot onto my hook, and let me just show you what the chart looks like. So we skipped ahead, just so you know, we worked this. This was the last round that we were working on, was round number 4, and we did like a partial round, but you would finish that up. And then there would be the next round, which would be round 5. So that's what I've already done here in the silvery kind of silvery green color. So that would be round number 5 on the chart. And then round number 6 is shown here, and it is mostly double crochets with those chain 2s at the corners. So we're going to add our yarn just as we have been all the way along. We're going to add it to one of these chain 5 spaces. So we're going to insert, yarn over, pull up, and pull through that slip knot on the hook to join it. And then we're going to chain 3, 1, 2, 3. Okay, so we're right here. We're going to add 2 double crochets into the same chain 5 space, and then we're going to move on to the next chain 2 spaces. Okay, so we're going to do 2 more double crochets right here. So 1 and 2. And then we're going to move on to these chain 2 spaces. We have 1, 2, 3, 4 chain 2 spaces, and in each of those chain 2 spaces, we're placing 3 double crochets. Okay, so we have 1, 2, 3, and 4. All those spaces we're going to be putting 3 double crochets. All right, so here's 1 double crochet, 2, and 3. Skip to the next one. So this is more like a regular granny square. 1, 2, 3. Skip to the next one. 1, 2, 3. Skip to the next one. 1, 2, 3. Okay, and then when you get to the chain 5 space at the corner, you're going to do 3 double crochets, chain 2, 3 double crochets into that corner chain space. Okay, so here's our chain 5 corner. So we're going to do 3 double crochets, 1, 2, 3, and then we chain 2, 1 and 2, and then we're going to do 3 more, 1, 2, 3, just like that. And now we have turned the corner, and now we're going to be working across. So again, we have all those chain 2 spaces, and we're going to place 3 double crochets into each chain 2 space. So 1, 2, 3, and then 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. All right, we've made it to the next chain 5 space. So we're going to do the same thing we did here, where you do 3 double crochets, chain 2, 3 double crochets. So unlike before, remember how the rule before was when we're moving to the next chain 2 space, we do a chain 2. We're not doing that in this round of double crochets. I'm just going to point that out because I want to be clear. We were only doing that when we were working a popcorn round, but we're not working a popcorn round anymore. We are just working double crochets with those chain 2s at the corner. So 1, 2, 3. Now we're at the corner, so we're going to chain 2 and do 3 more double crochets into that chain 5 space. 1, 2, 3. All right, so we would continue this all the way around. And while I'm doing that, I want to talk to you guys a little bit about our project gallery. So on the website, on the Creative Crochet Corner, if you go under Browse and then you click on Articles, and then you will see that there is a project gallery. You can click on that, and then you can see a bunch of really awesome projects that people have been making who belong to our site. There is some really inspirational stuff in there, you guys. Amongst those things are some pictures of people working on their own gallery throw blankets, which is awesome. So I'd encourage you guys, if you guys are working on your blankets at home, even if you just have a square done, if you guys want to show us your progress, it is so fun for me to see these kinds of things. I love seeing what colorways you chose and how you guys are working things up, and you know, if you have any notes for other people, things that helped you out, that's a great thing to write that too. So I would encourage you guys to do that. There are a couple of photos that are on there by, let's see, a woman named Lori has posted some of her pictures. Maybe we can get somebody here behind the scenes to put those up on the screen so you guys can see them. And there is another group of pictures as well. I'm trying to remember the name of the person who posted those, but they looked really good, you guys. It's really fun for me to see you guys working on these projects. All right, and let's see here. So I'm just finishing up this round, and then we will do a couple rounds in single crochet. So definitely let me know if you guys are having any questions about this, or if you have any questions about previous squares. And after I talk a little bit about the end of this square, I am going to go back and answer a question or two that people have had since our last meeting about previous squares. All right, so here I am at the very last chain 5 space. I'm adding 3 more double crochets here, and then I'm going to chain 2, 1 and 2, and then I'm going to do a slip stitch in the top of this turning chain right here. So there's the top of my chain 3, and then I'm going to do a slip stitch right there, and then I'm going to fasten off. So I'll just cut my yarn and run through here. So I did, before I forget, I wanted to show you guys my steam blocking method. So I'm going to block this this little dome here that we're looking at. So if you look at it, it's very curved in a bowl, and when we press it flat, it is going to make a square. And I'm going to show you how it can stay like that if you do a little bit of steam blocking. If you use wool, then I would recommend, you can steam block wool, but I would also recommend doing a wet blocking on the wool. I just feel like that makes the fibers bloom a little bit. I enjoy doing wet blocking on wool projects and steam blocking on my acrylics. So try to ignore this, all these yarn tails here. Okay, so you just kind of push it flat, and it should hopefully stay a little, but if it doesn't, don't worry, because you can steam it a little, and after you give it a little steam, you can push it back down. So you just hold your iron a little bit above and give it a little bit of extra steam. I'm not touching my project at all, but this just kind of relaxes it, and then you can pat it into place. Obviously, you don't want to do this until you have your full square done. I'm just showing you so that you can see the difference between, see now when I wiggle it around and lay it flat, it just wants to go flat. So it just needs a little bit of coaxing to be the correct shape, because otherwise it might just stay into that kind of funny dome-shaped bowl. And we're not making bowls, we're making blankets. All right. Let's see here. Let's see, Marianne is saying, thank you so much, had fun, adds to all my crochet projects. May I get the previous squares and how? Yes. There should be a link to go to all, you could download all of the squares. They're on the Creative Crochet Corner website. Well, not all of the squares, all the squares that we've gone through so far. So there's squares 1 through 4 that are all available on the website. Let's see. Okay, so now after we've finished working that last round of the double crochets, now we are going to do the edging round. So the edging round, this is something that I added so that we can connect all these pieces of the blanket together and make it easier to sew together. It makes a nice frame around each square. Because to me, this project is kind of like a bunch of little framed paintings in a gallery. So in order to do that, that is what all the little plus signs are in this diagram in red. That the red the red symbols are showing you what we are making in this kind of contrasting color. Okay, so the borders. So we can add our single crochet, or add our contrasting color to any of the corners. I'm just going to add it to where I fastened off. So I'm just going to add it how we've been adding it all the way, so far. We're going to just place your hook through that chain 2 space, yarn over, pull up a loop, and pull through the loop on your hook. And then we're going to chain 1. That does not count as a stitch. That's just going to be our beginning chain. And then we're going to make 2 more single crochets into that same chain 2 space right here. So we're working 1 and 2. And then we're moving on to do 1 single crochet in each stitch across until we get to the next chain 2 space. So don't forget, you have this beginning chain here, so you need to make a single crochet into the top of your turning chain, that turning chain from the previous round, which is a little tight to get into because I slip stitched into it. But here's my single crochet, and then I'm going to single crochet in each stitch across. Until we get to the next corner, and then we will turn that corner. Okay, and Carol said that she likes I'm using acrylic, so that's marvelous, thank you. I think she's talking about the blocking, yes. Blocking acrylics with steam is something that I didn't really do until the last maybe, 3 years or so, and because I always blocked my pieces with water for the most part, and I was always kind of disappointed that my acrylics didn't really seem to respond to the water blocking very well, to wet blocking. But then I tried steaming it and I was like, wow, this is a game changer. It gives your piece so much more drape. So like if you're making a hat, especially like cables in crochet or something like that, you definitely want to steam block that if you're making it out of acrylic. It'll make it have so much more drape. It just makes the fabric look nicer. It really makes a huge difference. Okay, so we've worked a single crochet into each of those double crochets, and we've ended up here at that chain 2 space. So we're going to create 4 single crochets, work 4 single crochets into that chain 2 space. Just like this, and then we're going to continue around the edges of our piece. Okay, just by making 1 single crochet into each stitch around. All right? So as we work our way around, actually, I'll just get to the next corner. I want to show you, if you don't like how these corners are looking here, I didn't mind because there's a hole here and a hole here and a hole here, that there was a bigger hole here, but I'm going to show you an alternate way to do those corners if for some reason you don't like how big that this kind of hole is looking over here. Almost made it. So when you get to these corners, what you could do, instead of placing 4 stitches in here, or you would do this from the very start actually. You could try placing 2 single crochets into each of these chains, and that just creates a little bit less of a noticeable hole. I mean, there's still going to be a hole there. There's really nothing you can do to get rid of that hole because you have those taller stitches and then a chain 2 space in between. But this makes it just slightly less pronounced. So I kind of fiddled with which way I wanted to do it. And you can see there's a little bit of the green on the bottom of that. So let me put this on the gray so you can see the difference. Maybe that made it worse. Let's see. Let me put it back on the white. Okay, so there is, this hole is just a little bit more pronounced because you're stitching into that chain 2 space as opposed to stitching into the stitches. That's just the difference that I wanted to show you. It's up to you however you want to do it. I did it this way because it was just easier, and we already had these holes here, and I was like, it looks fine. I think it looks fine. But, I just wanted to give you that other option in case you like this one better. So basically, you just work your way all the way around, and when you get to the first stitch, you would slip stitch into that very first stitch, okay? And then you would chain 1, and then you're going to continue making these rounds, but you're going to be placing, when you get to a corner, you're going to be placing 2 single crochets into each of those 2 corner stitches. So if you take a look here, we have 4 stitches at the corner, 1, 2, 3, and 4. So stitches 2 and 3 would each get 2 single crochet stitches in them on the next round. All right, so yep, just double checking with my little map there to make sure I was telling you the right thing. Okay, so you just do 1 more round and then you'd slip stitch and fasten off, okay? And then you would block your piece after you have everything all together. I just showed you the blocking a little out of order because I've already blocked these pieces. I already blocked this piece and this piece, not thinking about how I wanted to show you how big of a difference that made. So that's why I blocked this little piece instead of waiting until I was done with this to show you how to block it. All right, so I did want to go back and talk about a couple of questions, answer a couple of questions in case other people are having these same problems as well. So let's see. So Bavine was saying, would you say that this throw is more for the intermediate crocheter and above? I'm barely an intermediate and I find some of these techniques to be rather difficult. Thanks. Yes, I would say this is, to me, this is pretty squarely intermediate or even advanced intermediate for all these textural stitches. Some squares are easier than others. Like I feel like the log cabin square is a little bit more straightforward, even though we're crocheting in a very strange way. But yes, some of these techniques are a little bit tricky. And actually the one I did today, I would say that's pretty squarely intermediate. It's not too complicated, but there is color changing going on. You're working with puff stitches and granny squares at the same time. But I do have to say, like, you can do it. You can absolutely do it. Don't be frustrated. If you're having a hard time, there are other resources on the Creative Crochet Corner website that you can watch. If you need some refreshers on some stitches, you can absolutely, certainly go back and watch these videos over and over again to see what I'm doing, and maybe do that with the crochet in your hands. Like, I think it was Carol, I can't remember, somebody was doing that today, stitching along with me. Yes, Carol. To be able to see in your hands what's happening and then look at the screen, but that's what this video format is for. So you can see me doing all these things, and you can, go back and watch the same parts over and over again, just to see if you can, if it makes more sense with the crochet in your hands. I think that it will. And just hang in there, and just remember and be nice to yourself. Just remember if you're getting frustrated or if you're having a hard time, that is a lot of times what learning feels like. Unfortunately, learning feels like that sometimes, but just think of all the new skills that you're going to have. Another suggestion that I have, if you are just thinking, oh, this is just frustrating, maybe you're a beginner crocheter and you don't want to jump into this whole huge project, but you can watch these and you can try them out, and if they are too hard, maybe you can find 1 or 2 of the squares that you really enjoy doing, and you could certainly make your blanket out of just 1 square. You could make all of the squares with that 1 square and it would turn out lovely. You could just alternate what colors you used and it would be just fine. So this is kind of a customizable project. You are able to pick and choose if there are just certain squares where you're like, yeah, I do not want to do that square, you know, whether you don't like how it looks or whether it's just too tricky or making you too frustrated. You can substitute with a different one of these squares. You could do more, you know, maybe pick 2 squares and then alternate between those 2. There's lots of different ways that you can put this blanket together. So I did see a question in here somewhere. Let's see, where did that go? There was a question that Sherry had. So she was wondering, she was working on the bobble square and hers is not coming out square. It's getting taller than it is wide, and she's wondering if you have any if I have any suggestions. So that is something that can happen when you're crocheting, and you know, maybe somebody, you've probably come across this before if you've been crocheting for a while. If you're trying to get a gauge swatch, and sometimes you're able to get the amount of stitches correct, but then your piece is too tall. Or sometimes, you know, your piece is the right height, but the stitches are making it too wide or too narrow or something. So there are ways to sort of play around with your stitch work so that you can try and alter the height of your stitches compared to the width of your stitches. Everyone crochets a little differently, and when you make all those loops, it is really hard to control. It's not hard to control. I should say it can be hard to match other people's gauges because they're crocheting differently than you. But I want to show you just a couple of things to look for. Let me pull this in here so you can see this a little bit better. Let's say we're crocheting back and forth, and you're having a hard time matching the height of your stitch to the width of your stitch. So you can definitely try using a different hook, but oftentimes those proportions are going to change. I mean, they'll stay the same, and your piece will just get smaller. So it'll still be too tall, and then it'll be too narrow. So let's say we're working along in double crochet here. Well, let's just do single crochet to keep it simple. So as you're working along in your single crochet, when you make a stitch here, actually when you make a stitch and you do your final yarn over and pull through, this, where you're pulling through here, this is going to determine the top loop, the width of that top loop, because when you make your next stitch, so if we pull it through a little longer and we make our next stitch, let me do a really exaggerated one. So we'll make that really long, and then we'll do our next stitch and pull through. It gets a little bit longer and a little bit longer as you stretch this loop out. Here, I'll do that again. So here's your long loop. After you pull it through, you make a long loop, and I'm going to hang on to it so it doesn't shrink. So we yarned over, pulled through, and now we're going to pull through 2. And now we have a longer loop. Now this is very exaggerated. I'm sure your stitch work does not look like this, but what I'm showing you is when you pull through, this loop helps determine how wide your stitches are, how far between, you know, like how much space there is between the posts of your stitches is determined by that top loop and how long that gets, right? So if that loop is really long, like this, it's going to create more space, and as you stitch back and forth, every time you make those loops, even if your stitch isn't very tall here, it starts getting wider at the top. Now let me show you how to alter the height of your stitch. So if you're making your single crochet and you pull up this loop longer, like that, it's going to make your stitch taller. And so this loop might not be very wide, but this is getting taller here. So chances are, let's see, who had this question? Sherry. Chances are when she's crocheting, compared to the way that I crochet, she probably pulls up a little bit more on that original loop that comes through before she finishes her stitch. Now there's nothing wrong with that, but it's just compared to how I'm crocheting, okay? And I'm, you know, there's nothing saying that I'm doing it right and other people are not doing it right. That's not how this works. It's just comparing how you crochet compared to whoever designed the pattern, how they crochet. People do crochet differently. So I just want to give you some tools so that you can try and match your crochet to the gauge that the other person's giving you. So if you're crocheting back and forth and your piece is turning out too tall, try to make your stitches a little bit shorter if you can. That is, you know, something to experiment with. But if you've already made your square and you're like, yeah, I'm not going to do that, I'm not going to go back and make a whole new square, that's fine. Another thing you could do to try and make your taller square match up You could just make your squares a little bit bigger, all of them. And on that taller square, you could add an extra row on each side, but not across the top and the bottom before you do that edging round. So you do that extra row. I think she was talking about, let's see, which bobble square? Let me pull that out. So if you did an extra row here and an extra row here in this tan color, you wouldn't even see it. You just do an extra row there, and then you can do, you know, your round of this contrasting color and then your edging round here. So there are ways to kind of change your square. You know, if your squares are ending up into rectangles, you know, you can try that. Another thing you could try is you could see if you could block it into the right shape. So let's say if this was too tall and you wanted it to be, you know, a little bit shrunk down, you could kind of push on this a little bit. Let me see if my iron's still on. Not yet. We'll see if that warms up. But you could try kind of smushing it together a little bit like this and steaming it to see. If it's just a little tiny bit, it's not going to make a difference, and you can kind of push it into place. And then once you get all of your stitches or all of your squares stitched together in your blanket, and then you block everything that way as it's all together, it should just even it out. I don't think it's going to create a problem unless it's a lot taller. If it's a lot taller, then it might bubble. So just depending on how much you need to change it, you might be able to change it with blocking. You might be able to, in order to make something shrink down a little like this, you can pull it a little bit sideways like that and push it down a little bit and try to block it like that, so you get a little bit squatter of a shape. All right, so let's see if there's any more questions that came rolling in. Carol Clark, yes, I find crocheting along with these videos is the best way to get it in my head. Yeah. Yes, I'm a really visual person, so this is how I like to learn. I like to watch somebody do something and explain it while they're doing it. It really does help. While I am crocheting, it helps a lot for me. And Lori is saying, I jumped in at the beginning and just kept rewinding and trying again until I got it right. So glad I stuck with it. Awesome. I am so glad to hear that. See all the things you guys are learning. This is amazing. All right, I think I've answered all the previous questions that we had from other squares, and I think I've answered all of these questions. Looks like it. All right, well, thank you guys so much for joining me for another Crochet Along Live, and I look forward to seeing you at the next one for when we do lesson number 5. So that is the Catherine wheel square. I'm excited. Please come back and join me. Bye.